That was a lot. Questions, comments, thoughts, concerns? Materials. What do we build this stuff out of? Hardwood versus softwood. Deciduous trees. What is a deciduous tree? What? No, a deciduous tree does lose its leaves. Hardwoods has leaves, grows slow, stronger, more expensive deciduous. Any tree that the leaves fall off of is a hardwood. Okay? We can talk about species later. Softwood has needles, grows fastest. 80% of the wood in the world is a softwood, meaning that it has needles. It's in that spruce pine fir family. SPF. Spruce. If you go in the store to buy wood, oftentimes you're going to find a stamp on the wood, and it's going to say SPF. It means it's either from a spruce tree, a pine tree, or a fir tree, because they're all very similar. They're different species, but they're all very similar. They have very similar characteristics as far as weight, so on and so forth. Quite similar in look, strength, and weight. Sometimes you'll go, you go to the store. If you go, wood is sold in bunks, meaning that it's banded together. It all comes out of the mill, and it's banded together. It comes by fork that they fork it into. They put it in the bin at the store. Sometimes you go to the store and you can tell that there's two different shipments because the one bunk is going to all be spruce or pine or fir, but the one that they got last week might have been spruce or pine. It'll be a different species, and so you'll see them all mixed together in the bin. It's kind of fun. Does it matter which one's which? It doesn't really. They're all very, still very similar. Hence the name. Nominal size versus mill size. Trees have water in them when they dry out. They're wet when they're cut. The tree is cut into boards and dried. The boards are then planed to final dimensions. They're cutting that crap right to the in recent years, they've improved the technology enough. When it goes through the mill, it's coming out in its finished size, and they're not processing it again. It comes straight out of the dryer, goes straight into the bark. And because it can't be, when it comes out of the log goes in the sawmill, it gets cut into boards. Those boards go into a kiln to dry them. It's basically a big heater. When they go in the kiln, they have to have air between them so that they can dry out. So then when they come out of the kiln, then they're bumped together where the boards are like touching each other. And so that's what happens. Anyway, 1x4 is 2x4 is 2x. So now we're going to talk, this is where it gets scary. Are you ready? How big is a 2x4? Go.
It's 1.5 by like 3.5.
If I take a tape measure and measure this, it's going to be 3.5 inches this way and 1.5 inches this way. Is that a 2x4? Why do we call it a 2x4? A 2x4 has a nominal size of 2 inches by 4 inches. Its actual dimension range down by 3.5. This is an industry standard that was adopted nearly a century ago. Why was it adopted? Why did we get there? Oh, back in the day, when they started cutting trees down, so the first people that cut trees down to build houses out, what do? They went out and cut a tree down, they laid it on the ground, and then what did they do with the next tree? Laid it down the other way. And they kept stacking trees up, and they made a log cabin. Okay? Why did log cabins fall out of favor? Lots of wood, heavy, hard to move the material from where it was cut down to where the house needed to be built. And so somebody said, man, what if we cut this tree up into smaller boards so we can carry them one at a time, or two at a time, or 5 at a time, and not have to carry the whole tree over there. And so somebody, invented a sawmill. And they said, what if we used make a long story short, they invented balloon framing in about the 18 whatevers, I don't remember, somewhere in there. They invented, if you live in a structure that was built in the last century in this country, it's what's called balloon framing, meaning that there's a big space inside with a very thin outer layer. and there's 2x4s in the walls of your house that hold your house up. So whenever they started this style of construction, they said, well, how big of boards do we, if we're gonna cut this tree up into not log cabin boards, what should we cut it down to? And so they started cutting boards, and it was basically trial and error, saying, oh, this is a good size. So the 2x4 really exists because that was strong enough and light enough. It met the two criteria. It was light enough to be easily portable, but it was strong enough to support, to do the task that it was asked to do. So that's where the sizing came from. 1-inch boards are only 3/4 of an inch thick. We've already violated the rule, because here we are, we're 1/2 inch smaller. A 2x4 is only 1.5 inches thick. So you would think that the 1-inch board would be 1/2 inch thick, but it's not. It's 3/4 of an inch thick. Okay. Width gets tricky because, of course, we can't have normal things. All widths up to 6 inches are 1/2 inch narrow. This is a 1x6. If I measure it, it's 5.5 inches wide. Right. If I get a 1x8. The 1x8 is only 7.25 inches wide. So when I go to the 8-inch, 10-inch, and 12-inch boards, which are the common boards that you can buy off the shelf, out of the store, are 3/4 of an inch narrow. Who and how and why? I don't know. Now, the one beautiful thing is it is consistent, and the 2-inch boards are the same. The width follows the same thing. A 2x8 is 7.25 inches wide. Does this really apply? Do you care? No, it doesn't really matter unless you're using lumber, and then you need to know this. But you'll figure it out. Okay? Defects. Everybody complains, but I go to the store and I buy wood and I bring it back to the shop. And you'd have thought I went to the store with the express intent of bringing back the shittiest crap I could find. People pick up the board, it's not straight. It's got a curve to it. It's got a bow, it's got a crook, it's got a twist, it's got checks in it, it's got a cup in it. Why did I buy that crap?
That's one of
It was the best one that was there. I did the best I could and picked that crap up. I remember one time at the Playhouse, I had gone and bought some lumber. And I came back, and I mean, the guys just, they complained, oh my God. And I got really mad. I said, the next time we need lumber, one of y'all is going with me. I am not going through this crap again. And I took Joe to the store the next time, and Joe was like, okay, I get it now. He figured out, like, I said, I didn't bring back crap because I wanted to make y'all mad. I brought you back what was there. So, as you get experience, one of the things that I feel one of the skills that I have developed over time that I think I'm pretty good at is when I'm picking lumber at the store, I have a rough idea of what I'm going to make out of it. And so I can look at a board that has wane on it, which is where the bark was on the tree, or has a cut in it, or has knots in it, or has some defect in it. I know what I'm going to make out of it. So I can pick up a board, I can pick up a 1x6, and I can say, oh, I'm going to cut that little part off. So I can deal with this board that has this defect in this particular area, or things like that. And so you get really good at, as you build a lot of scenery, you get really good at being able to pick up a board, and you'd be surprised at how bringing a pile of 1x6s in, they look like crap. But I can get you some really nice looking straight scenery out of this stuff because I know I have a lot of experience of how to cut the boards out of the material to get nice straight boards. Where I have a piece here that has wing on it. I don't have one. See, wane is where it's the outside of the tree. This is where the bark was on the tree. And so what they've done is when they cut the tree, when they milled it, they got right out to the edge of the tree. And they're making. The reason wane is good is because they're using all the tree. They're not wasting the tree. The reason it's bad is because I don't want lumber that has crap on it. I need a nice square corner for what I'm doing. Not always. There are places in the scenery that I build where I can have some wane in that board, out in the middle of that flat. I don't care. But where I need to make joints, it can't have that there. So there's times and places where we can use material that has lane. See what plywood. Let's go back just a half a second here. I wanted to show you, these are 2 2x4s. This is if I go to the store, I'm going to buy a 2x4 that looks like this. These are 2 2x4s. If you'll notice, you see the differences in size. These are 2x4s. These 2x4s came out of houses that were built in Muncie, Indiana around the turn of the century. We got these from I was working up there, and we got these from a salvage company that was tearing old houses down. And you'll notice that they're radically different sizes. And that's because this lumber was cut before lumber sizes were standardized. And so they were just cutting the tree into sizes. And so each mill would have, from day to day, from tree to tree, the 2x4s would vary in size. So, kind of a unique situation. This one has, you can also see, this is called checking. You can see there's a crack in the board. Does that affect the strength of the board? Sometimes not. Sometimes it really, it does to some degree, but usually you can deal with it. It doesn't really make it less strong. So, also to compare the, I don't know how well you can see that. Can you see how thick the rings of growth on the tree are here versus over here? Most of the lumber that you buy in the United States is a hybrid variety. They're planting trees to grow. They've found the trees that grow really fast, and they've cultivated that species of tree because they want to plant that tree and they want that tree to turn into lumber in a few years instead of decades. These were decades-old trees that were cut down to make lumber out of. This tree was probably 15 to 20 years old when it was cut down. So they're really they're growing that crap. Tree farming is the thing. That's a very complicated question. Okay. I was in Italy working at this opera festival for weeks in the summer, last couple of summers. Here is what I have learned about lumber in Italy. They don't have Home Depot and Lowe's and Menards. You don't just go to the store and buy wood. It doesn't exist. You can't do that. The people that buy wood, because people don't do their DIY is not a thing in Europe or in Italy, especially in Italy. It seems like kind of not common in Europe in general. If you want to paint your house, you call the painter, and the painter comes over and uses all of their skill and experience and knowledge to paint your house for you. And you pay them to do that. If you need a plumber, you don't go buy plumbing parts and do your own plumbing. You call the plumber. The plumber comes and does it. That's the way, one of the big cultural changes that's different from here to there. And so if you need wood to build scenery with, or you're working for the opera festival, you have to get the local interpreter to take you out to the shop out on the outskirts of town, where the wood shop. And there's a shop out there where they make things out of wood. And you talk to them, and they're getting lumber, they're getting stuff from the mill. When they're working on a project and they need wood, they call the mill and say, hey, I need 14 boards that are 60 by 80 millimeters or whatever. And they're having material cut specifically for that project. There is less standardization. There is some standardization, but I don't know exactly what that standardization is. But it's not commonly available information because it's only used by the people that make things out of wood.